Hey, what's up, guys? It's Apollo Uchiha here, back with a new, you can say, short movie. Yeah, and this is What If Naruto Had a Family. It's kind of a funny one, and it's a story by Shade Knight 123. You can check him out, and yeah, guys, if you haven't, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel. And without further ado, let's begin our story. Naruto Uzumaki stared at the silver-haired teenager with a mask on his face. His mouth hung open, a finger stuck inside it. He had ringed the doorbell. Kakashi Hatake knew it was going to be one of those days. Anko Mitarashi crumbled from her spot on the couch. Is it the brat? Yup. Kakashi sighed, letting the boy in and closing the door. A moment later, he remained in front of the closed door. It's another one of those days, huh? She sighed, stretching up from the sofa as the blond boy settled just next to her. Before grabbing a pillow and trying to use it to hide himself, Anko grinned and stood in wait for the final. There was a loud knock at the door. Kakashi opened it. Is that stupid idiot here? Sasuke asked, before looking around and zeroing in on the blonde locks that seemed to emerge from beneath a hastily placed pillow fort. I can't believe it. Kakashi closed the door and remained where he was. There was a loud knocking. He opened once more. Hello. I'm sorry, Mr. Hatake, but have you seen Naruto and Sasuke perhaps come by? Iruka had a stressed smile on his face. Now the pillow fort held both Naruto and Sasuke hiding from the instructor. I don't have the faintest of the clue, Kakashi said. Did you lose them again, Teacher Umino? Iruka hung his head low. Really? Those two? Some days they just act up and disappear like this. Are my lessons really that boring? I wouldn't know, Kakashi replied. They'll come home eventually, and when they both do, I'll be sure to sternly reprimand them. Please do, Iruka said to him. The academy teacher left then, and Kakashi closed the door. He waited a heartbeat. There was a polite knock at the door. He opened the door and once more, and Shimura Danzo let himself in. It is preposterous, he said calmly as he took 5 steps inside before receiving a blunt bullet to his stomach. Grandpa! I'm not your grandfather, Danzo exclaimed. And you should be at the academy, studying to become a shinobi. Naruto happily ignored the nod, his exclamation, as well as the rest of his words. But it was boring. Kakashi closed the door. He waited. There was another knock yet again. He opened the door and let Yamato in. He's in here, isn't he? The Anbu said, with a defeated sound in his voice. They both are, aren't they? Yep, it's one of those days again, Kakashi said. Yamato groaned. Kakashi closed the door and waited once more. 5 minutes later, there was a furious knocking at the door that nearly unhinged it. He opened and sidestepped as Tsunade marched inside. Damn brats, she roared. I received another call from the academy. Is it possible you can't stay a month without causing trouble? Kakashi closed the door. He checked his watch. There was a soft knock. He opened and sighed. The Hokage sighed back, biting into his pipe as he stepped inside. Kakashi closed the door and followed him. It's another one of those days, eh? Hiruzen said, stepping into the larger living room. Danzo and Tsunade were both yelling loudly, quite more than what was good for their age, towards the 2 squirming children in front of them. While Sasuke was squirming, Naruto was happily ignoring it all and just nodding in a rhythm. Anko was chuckling while holding a dango stick in her hand and shoving an elbow into Yamato's sides as she pointed at the random faces Naruto made when the 2 lecturers ended up closing their eyes in the heat of the words on responsibilities and bright futures ahead of them if they didn't follow lessons seriously. Kakashi rolled his only visible eye. I still can't believe this worked out. Somehow, Risen nodded sagely. I should have thought about this long ago. A really, really long time ago. He sat down a nearby chair, waiting for the story on duty honor and above everything else, not making anyone worry, to die down. He had an amused face on. It had all begun with the QB attack years ago. He couldn't just left Naruto on his own, and he couldn't just leave him to anyone in particular. Therefore, he had left him to Kakashi. Once he couldn't actually leave Kakashi alone in check on a newborn boy, and so he had forced Tsunade back by paying her debts, and Konoha was in need of a son in any way. whether she likes it or not. Afterwards, Orochimaru had left the leaf, and he had once more ended up having to find a way for both his apprentices and his experiment. Although they could have been pretty well both experiments, though, since they both needed routine medical checkups anyway. He had made them live in the same place as Asani. It hadn't ended there because, of course, Danzo had been against letting Hiruzen's apprentice, a traitor, stay in the same house as the cubist Jinchuriki. Thus, Hiruzen had found the perfect, uttermost accelerating solution to that as well. He still laughed at the thought that a retired shinobi with nothing to do all day, Hokage-sama, and no, I am not leading root and all, could do. He had placed Danzo inside the house too. At that moment, Hiruzen had to bring a hand to his mouth to cover it, the smile that still managed to erupt from his lips at the thought of Danzo's face when he had been told he'd be personally checking on the situation by himself. The Uchiha coup d'etat was dealt with, but thankfully Itachi had done it on the day Sasuke had been sleeping over quote-unquote with Naruto, and because he had suggested that the boy traumatizing his younger brother would not work at all. Sasuke hadn't taken it well, but Naruto wasn't easy to ignore, and since Sasuke couldn't like and live alone anymore, so Hiruzen had another genius idea of his. In his hindsight, he would have preferred not to have to exterminate a founding clan of Konoha, but there had been no choice on that matter. Still, with everyone around him being happy, that was a reward by itself, the pleasant lull of the day to come. Ah, how they soothed his old heart. Naruto Uzumaki had the best family ever. On the other hand, those who wouldn't have a surname got a one now, just like his, meaning they were family, and those who didn't have a surname like his but lived with him were family anyway. It was so cool. He had two older sisters, Shizune and Anko, who looked the opposite of one another. He had two cool older brothers, Kakashi and Yamato, who were once more the opposite of one another. He had two cool grandfathers, who were yet again the opposite of one another. He had a very cool grandmother who could destroy stuff with her fist, and he had a brother who has a bit of duck ass, but clearly it was because there was enough cool in the family, his own coolness wasn't required. The morning in the Uzumaki household, or family of madmen and madwomen, so as some of the neighbors called them, which once more was a cool nickname in his thought. Hey, it's pretty cool when you catch that. Grandfather Danzo woke up early. He trained in the backyard until breakfast, taking about most of the time. Naruto had checked really. Maybe his grandfather needed to chill a bit if he thought the bushes needed trimming and the shadows required a bit of working on, quote unquote, on trimming and shadows. It wasn't as if you could make a shadow your enemy. No. Still, the ones who woke up next were always Big Brother Kakashi and Yamato. They actually had work most of this time, and they wore cool masks to boot. One day, he was going to get a cool mask too, he thought. After them, it was the turn of his big sister Shizune to wake up. She proceeded to prepare breakfast for everyone before waking him and Sasuke up. Then, of course, it was big sister Anko's turn to wake up. That normally ended within the next 10 minutes, with wicked skills in needle throwing and yelps depending on who was the one on the receiving end of the attack. It was so cool. Frankly, Naruto knew the people around him weren't his real family. No one had ties of blood with him, but he didn't care. He had a wonderful family. He loved it very much. It was a crispy and breezy winter morning that was both him and Sasuke heading off to school. Normally, he wind up a storm, but on that day, they were going to practice throwing weapons, and so he was actually eager to go to school. Maybe he got to participate in the morning games between Anko and Shizune, throwing his own needles in the mix. Unknown to Naruto, Yamato, Anko, and Kakashi shadowed both him and Sasuke. After the attempted Hyuga heirs kidnapping, security had increased around a key figure, namely the cubist Jinchuriki and the last of the Uchiha. They took shifts, of course, because obviously no one insane of his or her mind would ever follow Naruto for an entire day without breaks. He would run rather than walk. He would dash up and down Konoha without a care in the world, laughing loudly like a bundle of joy. On the positive side, he dressed in glaring neon orange and nobody had taught him the henji yet, so it was still easy to find him when he got quote unquote lost. The people around the streets were always happy to see him. They talked how good of a boy he was and how he was such a kind-hearted kid to help them around because Naruto Uzumaki was a perfectly normal orphan boy and his escort went unseen, or when seen people mistook it for the Uchiha's escort rather than Naruto's. Only few people knew of the Jinchuriki of Konoha's, and that was, of course, frankly speaking, Hiruzen again had a brilliant idea to keep quiet on the status of the Jinchuriki slash weapon. It wasn't like he had the intentions of making Naruto a weapon, but if the enemy didn't know whether the Jinchuriki was field able or not, then they wouldn't attack out of fear or retaliation. Hiruzen gazed from his crystal sapphire in his office how life went by peacefully thanks to his brilliant ideas, how everyone was truly happy of the arrangements and how nothing could possibly go wrong. That was when the teacup on his desk cracked. Hiruzen took a deep, unsettling breath. Naruto Uzumaki didn't like school very much. On one side, he was a little jealous of that Sasuke got all the attention from the females in the classroom. On the other hand, he was angry that Sasuke never actually returned them. Can you just pick one? Naruto said, certainly making Sasuke raise an eyebrow in his direction. Just pick one. Tell her you think she's cute or something like that, and then they'll leave you all alone. Don't you think? I tried that, you idiot. Sasuke replied. Oh? Naruto blinked. And what happened next? I told her she had pretty hair. The other girls took fistfuls of it and made her go home bald. Naruto shuddered. You have very, very creepy fangirls. I know, you don't have to tell me that, Sasuke acquiesced. But if they coup after the last heir of a powerful clan who no longer has any family left and is extremely bitter, then they cannot be completely sane of mind, right? You know what? Naruto remarked. Maybe you should try confessing to a boy. See how that goes down. I already tried that, Sasuke replied, once more, perfectly calm. Do I want to know how that happened? Naruto nervously chuckled. And why the hell didn't I know about that? You come to school fewer times than me. I got bored, so I try new ways to fend off my fangirls without you around. Naruto whined, slamming his head against the desk of the classroom. So, who did you confess to? The teacher, Mizuki. Sasuke asked calmly. The teacher? Come on, you can't confess to a teacher. He tried to make me steal the forbidden scroll. Sasuke chuckled and continued. That's why I went to the Hokage office and told him everything. Wait, is that why he had a cake a few weeks back? Exactly. Sasuke acquiesced. I thought you remember the reason for that. The Hokage even asked me if I want to graduate early. What? No fair. I need to try to confess to a teacher too then. And then what happens? Why did you refuse? Sasuke raised an eyebrow and looked at Naruto. Because you barely come to school with me here, and if I go, who the hell is going to get you in here in time for class? Naruto looked at Sasuke with glittering eyes and beautiful sparkles around his face. Sasuke, you're a bro. I know you were a true friend to me. Sasuke threw a rubber band at Naruto's forehead, making him wince and lose his sparkle. Ouch! What was that for? After the confession, the fangirls began publishing man-on-man comics. I refuse to have you as a possible Ook or Seme. Get the hell out of the Bishoujo persona right now before I beat the crap out of you. Naruto pouted. Sasuke sighed. The attendance rate of Naruto increased after that day, much to Iruka's surprise. Just like Naruto's confession to him, and Naruto and Sasuke face planted on the floor with a loud scream of idiot. Naruto Uzumaki was having a great day. His family had come to visit him during the school hours of the teacher-parent meetings. Iruka had aptly decided he needed a break 2 minutes after the start of the bell. He wasn't paid enough to speak of Naruto's progress with the Yamin of Shinobi, two Anbus, a legendary Sani, the Hokage, and an hyperactive teenager with the purple hair being manhandled roughly by another teenager with a sweet smile. The way they stood in the back of the classroom, watching over Naruto and Sasuke backs as they did their best impression of paying attention, it made Iruka feel as if he was the one being under security. It was only 5 minutes passed by then, and he took a stiff drink. So, The teacher said. Anyone can tell me what the first Hokage specialty was. The question was easy, made specially to make the children look good in the eyes of their parents. Naruto hand shot up first. Iruka decided just to pull the teeth out of the way and to let him go first. He shouldn't have. The first Hokage could do the laundry better than his wife. Iruka's lip twitched. Rather than a smile, in a pale mockery of grimace mixed with a I am going to bloodily harm you and I would throw this chalk at you if it weren't for your security entourage. I mean, as a ninja, Naruto, he had the special ability, the one for which he is most famous for. Oh right. Grandma said he made the wickedest of the salads. Naruto! Tsunade exclaimed. What? Naruto turned, blinking. That's what you said. Yes, but how did you come to believe that was a ninja ability? Tsunade continued. Said his cell was so sick and filled with splinters. They were a ninja weapon. Naruto continued. How cool was he to make vegetables into weapons? I can barely make a tomato into a weapon. So it was you! Sasuke roared out, cutting him out. Gripping Naruto by his neck. You were the one who took away my precious tomatoes. I wanted to make a salad like great-grandfather. Naruto replied, trying to free himself from Sasuke's attempting at choking the daylight out of him. Danzo took the moment to cough politely. Is that why I was missing a walking stick? Duh, splinters and all right. Naruto shot back. How can elsewhere you make the salad crunchy anyway? By not adding wood splinters to it. Tsunade barked. So Brad, Anko said offendedly. Who did you give the salad to? Naruto blinked. He looked sideways and nervously chuckled. A guy I know, Naruto said with a grin. It was such a kind-hearted smile that nobody really bought it. Mizuki never received visits, while imprisoned of course. They were the exceptions. This time around someone had presented him with a nice and crunchy salad, at least. Judging by the message that said that a secret admirer was very impressed with how he had tried to get the Uchiha here to steal a forbidden scroll of sealing from him. There was even had been 3 X's for kisses on the corner of the message. He smiled brightly. Surely Orochimaru-sama would soon set him free and had sent him a salad to tell him to be ready. Maybe it was a secret message of sort, how shinobi like to send messages with salad. The first bite was crunchy. The blood and the scream of pain as the splinters craved their way through his mouth made him agonize as tears of blood fell down from his eyes. This was a secret message. It wasn't a message at all. The cell guards shuddered and looked to one another. Ibiki's tortures are inhumane. One whispered, Thank God we're not in there. The other said, holding his body tightly. Only a master could do something like that. He's screaming so high. The first one whispered back, It scares me. It's alright. He's not torturing us, at least. The second said, Anko must have given Ibiki a few suggestions. That's it. The first god nodded meekly and then tried to silence the screams of pain and both had their hands on their ears. The seconds soon followed. Who were they to claim inhumane the torture methods of the tea department? Meanwhile, class at the academy soon reached the bell signaling lunch break. Apart from a general distrust of everyone for what lunch they had that included salads, triple check them for splinters. There were no important accidents worthy of notice. If anything, the other students were even more in awe about the fact that Naruto had gals to sit on Danzo's lap in the courtyard where they had their lunch with their parents included. The fact Shimmer Danzo was a puce color of pure hatred and loathing meant absolutely nothing to the blonde-haired, blue-eyed boy who grinned proudly at his cramps. And that's over there is Sakura-chan. She has a very pretty forehead, and her hair is really shiny. Naruto nodded to himself as he spoke. Sasuke shuddered as he kept his back against the tree trunk, eyeing warily around him as he took out his lunchbox. He carefully moved a piece of rice towards his mouth before swiftly flickering out of sight as a raving horde of fanatical fangirls shot their way to the spot he had been prior moments. Now she's in his son, Anko-san, Sasuke barked, and the two older Konoichi grinned as they managed a night-perfect redemption with a metal cable of a squirming ball of raving fangirls. With a wide grin, Anko kicked the ball away, letting it roll across the courtyard. and into the helpless grasp of the girl's parents who tried their best to disentangle their swamps. For once, Sasuke could eat in peace. He was very glad for this family thing. Hiruzen laughed good-heartedly, while giving a worried glance towards Kakashi, who simply shrugged it offhand, his hand flipping through the pages of his Icha school days. Hehe, you're very naughty, Makoto-kun. Kakashi giggled to himself as he read on. Yamato slowly inched away from his perverted senpai. Tsunade chugged down another bottle of sake before giving a frown to a sparkling-eyed girl with buns on the back of her hair. You're Tsunade of the Sanin! You're Tsunade of the Sanin! I'm your greatest fan, and can you please sign me an autograph, pretty please? Tsunade gushed out, squirming at the girl. Sure, Brad. Tsunade rolled her eyes as she was given a kunai. Please, crave it on my body, Tsunade-sama, Tenten exclaimed, giving her arm. Wouldn't a piece of paper be better? Tsunade said softly. Tenten just smiled brightly. Why? I get autographed and healed at the same time by the sun and I admire. Pretty please? Please? You know what, Brad? Where are your parents? Tsunade asked. Tenten gushed even more. They're off working. They said it was stupid of me to try the Shinobi Academy, but I want to become a Konoichi like you, so please sign my arm. Please? How did I give a written autograph? Huh? Tsunade thought. Then I had an idea. Hey kid, how about I give you an autograph, a written one, and you can hang that on the wall? Eh? Tsunade tried next. Tenten sharply took Erin. You would do that? Yeah, of course, Tsunade replied with a kind smile. You're the bestest of the Sanin. I knew it. I'm going to be just like you when I grow up. Haha, glad to hear that, kid. Still, Tsunade felt a very cold shiver rush down her spine, and she didn't know why. Anko Mitarashi had been an orphan for most of her life. She knew it wasn't her fault, but the nagging feeling that she had done something wrong always stuck with her. Why else would her sensei abandon her too? She didn't know what she had done wrong. Maybe she wasn't demure enough or curly enough, or maybe she was just different from the other girls of her age. But she never did found an adoptive family. She entered the shinobi world to have a high-paying job and retire early in order to enjoy life to its fullest. Her life had always been shitty after all. God had to render her due back, right? He did, if only, with granting her the possibility to live a suck-filled life as the student of the traitorous Sani. At least, that had been her thoughts. The Hokage had then inserted her within his family project and forced her to live together with a bunch of lunatics of their own. Nursing a stiff drink, she looked up at the blue sky of Konoha and sighed. Naruto was happily sitting next to her, his grin bright and bubbly. I like it when you catch me, big sister Anko, he exclaimed suddenly a moment later as the tango they ordered arrived to their table. Big brother Kakashi's no fun. She grinned back. Oh, what about Yamato? He always brings me back to academy, Naruto pouted. It's like he doesn't even have a funny bone on his body. Maybe that's because he needs one inside him, Anko replied. Naruto frowned. She snickered and rolled her eyes. You'll find out what I mean when you grow older, Brad. Naruto just beamed at her, his full and bright smile, and she returned it. They ate their tango before starting the very long and much panoramic return to the academy. Why don't you like the academy? She asked him after a while. It's boring, pouted back Naruto. And Sasuke's an annoying duck butt, always studying and such. There's not a moment of fun unless it's the break, but we're always haunted by Sasuke's fangirl and we don't get any peace. Anko nodded. I see. Is there anything else? Naruto shyly fidgeted with his index fingers. I like hanging around with my big sisters and grandpa, he replied. Anko blinked. I mean, what if tomorrow you're no longer here and I missed out on something because I went on some boring academy, and it's not like I can become an awesome ninja by practicing only at home, right? Oh, Anko murmured. She brought her left arm around Naruto's side of the head before pushing him closer to her side to give him a light hug. We're not going anywhere, Brad. But how can you be so sure? I mean, I don't have any parents because they left me, so who says you won't leave me one day too? I'm sure your parents loved you very much, Naruto. Anko sighed. But you got a hell of a way to sour the mood, kid. I'll give you that. She ruffled his spiky blonde hair. Now come on back to the smiling you, Brad. She began to tickle his sides, making him laugh as he tried in vain to free himself. Uncle laughed too. Naruto had such a wonderful, about crystalline laughter that it was hard not to laugh together with him. Race you back to the academy, Brad, Anko exclaimed. As soon they both began their run back, she slowed her pace enough to let him win, just because, of course. Uruka gripped in Naruto into a headlock the moment they entered into the backyard. You, what did I tell you about running off? It's dangerous, Naruto, he growled. Oi, Anko exclaimed. Don't manhandle the brat too much or he won't get enough blood to his brain. Not that he has that much of a brain to begin with. It's not fair, big sister Anko, Naruto pouted before entering the academy, pulled by an ear. I will grandpa next time. Anko humped and watched Naruto go, waving goodbye at him with a cheerful grin of her own. She sighed. Maybe she could ask for a part-time job there. It would convince Naruto not to run off that fast again. The spines of many children shuddered and trembled at the thought. The Hokage teacup cracked for the second time. A few hours later, and Danzo sighed, holding onto a teacup and gazing at his office deep within the balls of root. It was a secret hideout, hidden, impossible to find, and mostly the only place he could act a bit broody. Yet it was orange. It was bright neon orange with pink stripes and green dots. He sipped his tea, evited a heartbreak. The door creaked open to admit one of his root operatives, his mask a dazzling mixture of gold and silver glitter. Danzo-sama, the operative said. I don't know. I do not know, Danzo said truthfully. Whether to be impressed or have a heart attack. I will have both at the time, I think. He took another sip of the tea. The operative remained quiet. Do bring in Tsunade, would you? Danzo said. The operative disappeared with a flicker of gold and silver. Danzo proceeded to have a heart attack. Naruto crossed his arm behind his back as he walked back from his school, Sasuke next to him. You're an idiot, Sasuke pointed out. How are you going to graduate if you keep missing on lessons? I'll find a way, Naruto replied with a shrug. I'm awesome. You're awesome. We're team awesome, and we'll find a way. Like always, you're going to be the dead last if you keep this up, dope, Sasuke remarked. Yup. And that means that you'll get to train hard and study a lot more than me because you have to become the rookie of the year. Sasuke raised an eyebrow. You're a bastard sometimes, aren't you? Don't know about that, Naruto grinned. But it's too much hard work being the top of the class. You take that spot. I'll be the dead last. Then we can get Sakura to be our prime Konoichi. She's a fangirl, Sasuke roared. Yeah, but I like her, Naruto retorted back. She got a pretty forehead and bright hair, and I mean pink is such a different and beautiful color, Sasuke sighed. She won't give you the time of the day with me around. But you're my brother, so you'll help me, right? Sasuke hung his shoulders and his head down before nodding once. The thing I do for my family. Naruto gave him a brotherly punch at his shoulder, and Sasuke returned it after a moment. Should we stop by Ichiraku to get some ramen along the way? Shine said no to, or we'll spoil ourselves for dinner, Sasuke replied. But it's ramen. Ramen never... Sasuke cut him off. No, meanie, Naruto pouted, crossing his arms in front of his chest and standing still. Just move, idiot. Sasuke sighed, gesturing towards home. You can have ramen any other day, but no buts. We all have butts. Sasuke curled down a curse in the back of his throat. Naruto grinned and began to rush past him. Last one home has no buts. That's not how it works, Sasuke yelled back, rushing back at him. All in all, it was another beautiful day back in Konoha. Hiruzen had hoped the team assignments to be less headache, including this time around. He watched with sick fascination as Kakashi entered, wrote down the name of the two students he wanted, and then proceeded to pick the first Konoichi of the class, and remarked quietly and firmly that either I get these three or I walk out on whatever team you wish to assign me. It was funny how Anko, of all people, censured in the next minute with a sheet outright demanding Naruto insertion into the torture and interrogation squad department. The form had Ibiki's signature. There was blood on the parchment too. Risen felt the impending headache increase when Danzo brought forth the suggestion to have Naruto enter a training camp where, in a quote-unquote happy country of happiness and certainly not a root secret facility to obtain a weapon for Konoha, he was tempted to let Naruto go, just to pinpoint the place with accuracy thanks to bright neon orange paint. At the same time, he knew Danzo wouldn't be offended if his offer ended up in the Bane. Tsunade wanted Sasuke to learn her medical skills. Yamato wanted Sasuke because he was the quietest of the pair. Shizune was fine with either of the boys. Hiruzen headache just grew. Now if only he could find a solution that would make everyone happy. Well, except for Naruto failing the exam, something that he wouldn't, because someone had more strangely let him have a peek at the Kagebunshin technique and thus he didn't really want to remember past that. His mind refused to understand how much a boy would be able to create such a lethal technique like the harem no jutsu and the fact that it was Naruto of all the people. The Hokage coughed and cleared his head. Team assignments, team assignments. You need to place Sasuke and Naruto somewhere they would be capable of flourishing, and yet at the same time with someone who wouldn't be scared of having some of the strongest shinobi ever come by to talk to them. There really was no choice in the end. He was sure the unlucky guy would understand. This was for the greater good of Konoha. Asuma Sarutobi felt if death had crawled over his stomach, taken a seat next to him, and began dealing him a shitty poker hand. By the next time he opened his eyes the following morning, he didn't know why it felt so, as if his dad was responsible for him feeling like hell, but he was sure the old man had done something to deserve his momentary thought about how easy it would be to fix with prune laxative his coffee cup in the morning. Still, Asuma went about his daily duties, as usual, until the Hokage called him to receive the update papers, on which his students' names would be. It was a tradition for Sarutobi to train Akemichi, Yamanaka, and Nara, apart from his father, who trained Sanin as well. It was a tradition that had lasting for so long as the village had been in place. That meant relatively little, since it was barely half a dozen of generations, but it was one Asuma hoped his old man would respect. He received the paper and opened it calmly. Next to him, Kakashi hummed as he did it the same. Anko was present too, and her looks was pleased as she began opening her paper. There was a heartbeat of silence. When Asuma raised his eyes from the paper, the Hokage was no longer there. A straw mannequin holding the semblance of the Hokage, drawn in ink, stood in his place with the Hokage's garments and all, as well as his robes. 6 words scribbled on a note attached to the head made Asuma mentally curse the day his father had decided to take a note out of Naruto Uzumaki's book. Take it like a man, son. Asuma Sarutobi made the manliest of girlish shrieks as he ran for the hills, while Mitsubishi Anko and Kakashi Hatake both growled at his retreating form. Meanwhile, the Hokage happily sipped away at his secret stash of alcohol in the middle of the village, hidden under the disguise of a poor misunderstood old man with the white hair and a slightly overweight complexion. They'd never find him, and he needed a moment of peace for himself as well, away from the paperwork and all of this headache. The fact there was an equally anonymous man, very thin, with the eye patch over his right eye next to him doing the same thing about absolutely didn't mean he and Danzo were actually drinking partners. It was preposterous since they both couldn't drink Tsunade's orders, and if she found them drinking, she'd have strong words on them. So, 2 anonymous gentlemen drank alcohol on the bench in the park, watching with amusement as a certain Asuma Sarutobi dashed by screaming, falling by Hatake Kakashi with a raikiri per hand and screaming thunderous 1,000,000 years of pain, and Anko Mitsubishi, a snake per hand yelling pipe cleaning technique, much to the disgusted faces of our summoned snakes. Konoha used to be such a peaceful village, Dan's anonymous old man said. Indeed, Hiru, second anonymous average old man said. A pity, I tell you, an old man can't even have a drink in peace now. This is good stuff, by the way, anonymous old man number 1 said with an eye patch. Where did you find it? It's a secret, average old man said with a smirk. If I told you, I'd have to kill you. Heck. You brought it at home? Damn it, My son tattled again, didn't he? He does brew the strongest of alcohols when he put his mind to it, the Moketan ability. I understand now why it was so prized. Indeed, Sensei, well, the first Okage, really liked his alcohol strong. And soon, the two nodded, reminiscing their past. The screams of Asuma in the background slowly drifted away, carried by the wind. And all was right in the world, except Asuma's ability to sit later that night. Hehe. But that's the story for another time. As this is where I'm going to be leaving the story of, guys. I know it's quite typical ending, but yeah, if you want to check this out, you can check it out as well. I have given you the name of this writer, and yeah, guys, if you haven't, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel. And the name of the original story is The Meaning of a Family. You can check it out on thefanfiction.com. It had 5 chapters, and all of them are recited to you. And this is Apollo Uchiha, and I'm signing out. Peace.